My Christmas with Einstein, A Tale of Indigenous Relativity, Part 1. This is Harriet Witt. We begin with the star that's at the top of what we've come to think of as the Christmas tree. This is called the world tree, and it inspired an indigenous practice that became the Christmas tree. You can see this counterclockwise motion of stars over the course of hours as our planet spins us around our axis. Ancient reindeer people revered the world tree because it shows us the cosmic order in our everyday lives. Reindeer people don't lead the reindeer, but follow them. This is because reindeer figured out how to survive here long before humans arrived. Our first roads were footpaths, and our first footpaths were animal tracks. As we followed these tracks to watering holes and food sources, we learned to survive where humans had never gone. Reindeer are revered by people who have been guided by them. People look to them as guardians and as spirit animals. Animals have always been our teachers because they figured out how to thrive here long before we appeared. We've looked to animals as our genomic ancestors, imitating their movements and working to gain their instincts and capabilities. Some people have learned to whisper with animals. Some ancient animal whisperers communicated so effectively that other folks perceived them to transform into the animal. People who transformed into an animal were called shapeshifters and shamans. Reindeer shamans helped Arctic people to expand their awareness and therefore their chance of survival. Some reindeer shamans were idolized, made into idols. Reindeer shamans were also sky watchers. Notice the stars depicted at the top of this shaman's drum skin. Reindeer shamans meditated on the world tree as they did their drumming. Sky-watching reindeer shamans were celebrated for their gift of raising people's awareness. They became the inspiration and the role models for our Santa Claus legends. When Santa was a shaman, the ancient origins of Santa Claus and the Christmas tree. But what does Christmas have to do with sky-watching reindeer shamans? To answer this, we remember our winter solstice. At day's end on the winter solstice, the sun glows like a flame atop this stone circle. The winter solstice is pivotal because shortening days are behind us and lengthening days are ahead. This is the end of a half-year cycle, but it's not yet the start of the next. In other words, the old cycle is no longer affecting us, and the new cycle has yet to imprint on us. This in-between point is a time out of time. This time out of time is called a null point, shown by these red dots. A null point is a transition, so it's where we can effectively introduce change. Trying to change when a cycle is already in full swing is as hard as swimming upstream. New Year's resolutions are rooted in our indigenous knowledge of null points. Our New Year is not at the winter solstice anymore because of calendar reforms. This null point gives us an opportunity to renew and recalibrate our relationship with nature and with our own nature. If we want to make the most of this opportunity, we can follow the example of sustainable cultures who used the null point for introducing changes necessary to stay alive. Different cultures have developed different practices for utilizing the null point, because different ecosystems offer different resources and challenges. The Arctic resources and challenges have motivated its reindeer people to find reindeer shamanic ways of utilizing the winter solstice. Remnants of these ways are still with us in the form of puzzle pieces. We can assemble the eco-puzzle. We can see how to live on our planet sustainably if we remember that reindeer offer milk, meat, hides, transportation, childcare, and, as we'll soon see, much more. The sky over the North Pole is another piece of our eco-puzzle. This world tree is a survival guide for the folks of the far north. Night in the Arctic lasts 24/7 for weeks around December 21st. Day in the Arctic lasts 24/7 for weeks around June 21st. But why these extremes? To see why, we remember that billions of years ago, our planet got slammed by an object half her size. This tilted our daily spin axis. We're tilted at a 23.5-degree angle to the plane of our yearly orbit around the sun. Note the solstices here. Our tilt is the reason for seasons. In winter, our hemisphere is tilted away from the sun. In summer, our hemisphere is tilted toward the sun. You see this world tree in the Arctic sky 24/7 for weeks around December 21st, unless it's cloudy. The stars appear to circle around counterclockwise because we're viewing them from a planet that's spinning us around our axis every 24 hours. This circling of the stars is apparent. The actual motion is ours. The movement we see in the sky is the projection of our spinning. This is the apparent sky motion over our equator, for contrast. The world tree is a pivotal piece of our indigenous eco-puzzle. Notice the star at the still point of this motion. It's the only star in the sky that's located over the north end of our daily spin axis. This still point star is called the North Star, the Pole Star, or Polaris. The closer you are to the North Pole, the higher you see the North Star, so the better your view of the world tree. The still point star is called the Nail of the Sky in Siberia, and it was pivotal to the success of shamans in working with the winter solstice null point. The world tree was so valuable to people that during the winter solstice, they went into the forest in search of a tree shaped like the world tree. Bringing it indoors, they decorated their forest tree as an altar to the world tree. The star atop our altar to the world tree is still at the top, but today we call it the Christmas tree. How did its name get changed? How our altars to the world tree came to be called Christmas trees is another piece of our eco-puzzle. If we want to assemble this puzzle, we need to remember that at the winter solstice, shortening days are behind us and lengthening days are ahead. We also need to remember that our sun's light becomes our Earth's life, thanks to photosynthesis. Primal people so revered this miracle that they celebrate the return of the light at the winter solstice. How light becomes life is a mystery to science. Of course, mysteries can be solved and mysteries can be celebrated. So let's look at the celebration of the winter solstice, where Jesus Christ was born. Jesus was born in the Roman Empire, where the winter solstice was celebrated as Sol Invictus, sun that cannot be conquered. The Bible has no record of Christ's birth date, but December 25th was always Sol Invictus. Deo is the root of our words deity and divine. Sol is divine because, thanks to photosynthesis, its light becomes our life. There is no historical record of anyone celebrating Christ's birth until the 4th century after Christ. During the 4th century, the Roman Emperor Constantine weaponized Christianity. Constantine was not Christian because in those days Christians were slaves, disenfranchised people, and counterculture folks who drew their strength from Christ's message of love. Constantine worshipped Sol. He built the city of Constantinople as a monument to himself. He financed this by imposing fines on everyone who didn't go along with his program. His program, by his account, came to him in a vision. He claimed he saw a cross superimposed on the sun as he heard these words, "By this sign shall you conquer." The holiday of Sol Invictus was rebranded as Christmas at Constantine's behest in the year 325. 12 years later, he was baptized into Christianity on his deathbed. Constantine, by this sign conquer. The Roman Catholic Church that Constantine weaponized went on to control the thrones of Europe. This cathedral is in England. As you know, the so-called Christmas tree began in the sky, where the stars appear to circle the north polar end of our planet's axis, because we're viewing them from a planet that's spinning us around our axis, every 24 hours. The movement we see in the sky is the projection of our spinning. Our world tree has been honored in different ways by different cultures. The trunk of the world tree is our planet's daily spin axis. The axis mundi is Latin for our daily spin axis. Mundi means the world, and it gave us our word mundane. The axis mundi is widely revered as the connection between the heavenly and the mundane. The axis mundi is how we connect our mundane lives to the heavens. As you know, the axis mundi is most available to us at the sacred null point of our winter solstice. This is the end of part 1. Please see part 2. This is Harriet at passengerplanet.com. My Christmas with Einstein, a tale of indigenous relativity. Part 2. This is Harriet Witt. Gift giving at the winter solstice is practiced in many cultures, but where does this fit into our eco-puzzle? Joseph Campbell helps us here. His historical atlas of world mythology depicts far northern shamans as the archetypal gift givers we have come to know as Santa Claus. These shamans are from Scandinavia, Siberia, and Lapland. Shamanic Santa has a gift for us, and it's the shaman's giftedness. The shaman is gifted at using the meditative power of drumming to alter brainwave patterns and transcend mundane life. This generates community cohesion for decisions that need to be made at the winter solstice null point. Note the reindeer antlers on the shaman and the world tree on the drum. Yes, the reindeer shaman is gifted at seeing in a season of darkness by achieving inner stillness. The shaman becomes still by meditating on the still point star atop the world tree. This tree, this axis mundi, is made apparent to us by our planet spinning us around her axis every 24 hours. Yes, the shaman aligns with our planet's axis. If you align with our planet's axis, you ascend or climb the world tree up into the heavens. Notice the up arrow at the top of the shaman's spine. Shamanic Santa is said to live at the North Pole. Only when you're at the North Pole does the Earth's axis come up through the soles of your feet, through your legs, through your spine, and out the crown of your head. So when you're at the North Pole, you're naturally aligned with our axis and can climb up the world tree. From up in the sky, you look down and see that what's moving is our Earth and not the sky. The ability to do this and to see this is the gift, the giftedness of Shamanic Santa. Shamanic Santa's beloved world tree is called Yggdrasil in Old Norse. Because Yggdrasil joins the mundane and the cosmic, it's the key to northern cosmologies. Yggdrasil. Yggdrasil. Yggdrasil still has deep meaning in today's Scandinavia. Many cultures revere our axis mundi because it joins our mundane lives with the cosmos. We do well to revisit the shamans who inspired our Santa Claus legends if we want to make the most of the opportunity that is the winter solstice null point. One of these shamans is Odin the Allfather. This Scandinavian hero became the Allfather when he surrendered to the world tree, uniting the mundane and the cosmic. Notice what his index finger is tracing on the ground here. Odin is gifted with a vision of the runes during his surrender to Yggdrasil. The runes. The runes, like the I Ching, help us to see the cosmic patterns in our mundane lives. The gift of shamanic vision also comes to us from the reindeer people. One of their teaching parables is about the northern sky. In the northern sky, we see this, the Big Dipper constellation, near the North Star, near the Still Point star. We see the Dipper appearing to circle around the Still Point star every 24 hours as our planet spins us around her axis. The Dipper's motion is apparent. The actual motion is ours. The Big Dipper is one of many names for this constellation. It's also called Odin's chariot because it's a vehicle for Odin's shamanic journeys. Since Odin is among the role models for the figure we call Santa, Odin's chariot became Santa's sleigh. If you are Santa, Sitting in your Big Dipper sleigh, you gaze down onto planet Earth and you see her spinning around her axis every 24 hours. As you watch this, you beam down your shamanic gift, and in 24 hours, it reaches everyone on Earth. If we want to see how Santa manages to deliver his gift inside people's houses, we need to remember that Santa stories were also inspired by the shamans of Lapland, where homes have a smoke hole chimney at the top. As winter snow piles up high, the only way to enter is through the chimney. As shamanic Santa legends spread to Europe and America, Santa's clothing changed, but the entry method stayed the same. Note the 2 arrows here. The shaman's drum is always among the gifts. This is how Santa passes on to future generations his gift of shamanic drumming. A little shaman-to-be sees the drum, and his genes recognize its primal power. The little drummer boy. Now that we have assembled this much of our eco-puzzle, we're faced with a question. How can we bring eco-meaning to our personal holiday celebrations? We can bring eco-meaning to our holiday celebrations if we look again at the reindeer shaman. This photo is from the Siberian Times in 2009. Notice the staffs held by the shamanic Santas, how each staff is a stylized world tree. Also notice the man in the center's stylized reindeer antlers. This caption from the Siberian Times reads, "As well as presenting gifts to children, he spreads positive energy and brings midwinter happiness." Picture from the governor of Yanao. Siberians remember that Santa was never just a fantasy for little kids. In Scandinavia, the reindeer shaman is still revered today. Scandinavia, like Siberia, is far from Europe, where shamanic reverence for nature was wiped out by the Roman Catholic Church's Inquisition. These contemporary photos make us wonder, how was the inwardly gifted reindeer shaman transformed into a bringer of nothing but material holiday gifts? This transformation is rooted in the story of the Reverend Clement Clark Moore, 1779 to 1863. The Reverend taught literature and divinity at General Theological Seminary in New York City. He wrote the Santa story that we know best. 'Twas the night before Christmas, when all through the house not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse. He did not write this story for publication, but for his family. He stored it in his desk. Later, a house sitter found it and published it without his permission. Keep in mind that this happened in the anything goes if you can get away with it mentality of New York City in the 1800s. Reverend Moore's poem inspired artists, many of them commercial, and Santa devolved into a mere marketing tool. When Santa was a reindeer whispering shaman, we understood the connection between the world tree and the reindeer. In this image, notice the shaman's drum depicting the world tree and the reindeer flying upward. Reindeer are ascending Yggdrasil, the world tree. Reindeer with Yggdrasil, the world tree. Reindeer with Yggdrasil, the world tree. What does the reindeer shaman know about this animal? The reindeer shaman knows that these animals learned how to survive brutal winters because they follow their teachers, who are much more ancient. The reindeer's teachers dwell in the ground. More than 1 billion years ago, beings like these assisted ocean plants in their epic migration out of the water and up onto land. Fungi assisted these plants by mediating relationships between them and the soil. These fungal relationships are still supporting plants as an underground internet. Yes, fungi are the genomic ancestors of all animal life, including humans. Our fungal ancestors live on in our DNA. Because our fungal ancestors live on in our DNA, many of our most effective medicines, such as penicillin, are fungi. Shamans notice that after reindeer nibble on the Amanita muscaria fungus, they dance, they prance, and they fly, as in high. Flying reindeer depicted on the shaman's drum are ascending the world tree. The shaman with flying reindeer is still celebrated today in far northern cultures. In this painting, you can see the red Amanita muscaria mushrooms growing on the ground. And behind the painting, to the left. This raises a question. How does the shaman join the flying reindeer? The shaman observes that this mushroom can be toxic to humans, but the reindeer's digestion metabolizes the toxins, allowing the shaman to fly with the reindeer by drinking its non-toxic urine. Contemporary far northern people still honor their shamans for what they have learned from our fungal ancestors. The common name for Amanita muscaria is fly agaric mushroom. A contemporary Siberian shaman still wears the red and white polka dots of the mushroom with whom she journeys. Cultural appropriation has happened. This photo of Earth with the moon in the foreground was taken by an astronaut on Christmas Eve, 1968. It's the first photo of Earth as the sacred being that indigenous people have always known her to be. Thanks to NASA, the industrial world is starting to remember indigenous reverence. Kids are growing up, seeing with their own eyes that our Earth deserves to be treated like the heavenly being that she actually is. I call this story My Christmas with Einstein because Einstein understood the relativity of time, and that relativity is about us having a relationship with this movement that we've been conditioned to call time. Yes, Einstein had such clear vision that he saw clear through the unnatural, rigid, mechanistic assumption that time is absolute, that time is independent of us, relentlessly pressing us forward, with you and me as its hapless, helpless victims. Einstein, seeing clear through the mechanistic illusion, opened the way for us to have a relationship with our years and a relationship with the cycle of our seasons. Just as our planet's indigenous people have always had a relationship with the cycle of our seasons. Yes, indigenous relativity is what I'm celebrating here. I'm grateful to Helen Kritzler for midwifing this project, to Elizabeth Theriot for her drumming wisdom, and to the artists and photographers whose work is used here. I created and presented this free of charge in December 2019 as my gift to the Makawao Public Library for their decades of loving service. For this reason, and because I lacked the means, I didn't always credit the artists and photographers whose work definitely does deserve credit. I share what I've done in the gifting spirit of the original Aboriginal Santa. This is Harriet Witt, Harriet at PassengerPlanet.com.